YouTube, what's good? In today's video, we're going to be going over the Masters of Evil pre-constructed commander deck from the Doctor Who commander set. If you enjoy videos like this, just keep in mind that there are all of the reviews for all of the Doctor Who commander decks on this channel, as well as a ton of other pre-constructed decks that you can take a look at. So if you're someone that's brand new to the game, all the reviews you could ever want and need are on this channel. So let's just get started with the reviews so that we can save as much time as possible. The commander for this commander deck is Davros, Dalek Creator. He's a 3/4 menace creature, so you need 2 creatures to block this creature when it attacks. This says, at the beginning of your end step, create a 3/3 black Dalek artifact creature token with menace. If an opponent lost 3 or more life this turn, then each opponent who lost 3 or more life this turn faces a villainous choice. You either draw a card or that player discards a card. So you essentially just get to draw a card at the end of your turn, or you can force an opponent to discard a card. Keep in mind, new players, that there are cards that exist in Magic the Gathering that benefit off of your opponent's discarding cards. So if they choose to discard a card, they could lose more life, or you could, draw a card anyway, or you can create a creature. So there are cards that benefit off of discard, or you just get to draw a card, which is good. This deck already seems pretty good. So we have a Clockwork Droid, 2 mana. You may exert the droid as it attacks. When you do, it can't be blocked this turn, and you scry 1. So exerting new players means that I have to tap my creature as it attacks, and if I exert it, my next turn I am not allowed to untap the creature because it's considered exerted, which means it can't attack the next turn. We have a Cybermen Patrol, 2 mana artifact creatures you control have afflict 3, so whenever artifact creatures we control attack and our opponent blocks that creature, they're going to lose 3 life. Alright. Cybermat, this creature has Skulk, so it can't be blocked by creatures with greater power. Whenever Cybermat attacks and isn't blocked, it gets +X/+0 until the end of turn, where X is the number of artifact creatures that are attacking. Okay, that could be a lot if you're attacking with a lot of creatures. The Master Formed Anew. When you cast the spell, you may exile a creature you control and put a takeover counter on it, You may have the Master Formed Anew enter the battlefield as a copy of a creature card in exile with a takeover counter on it. That's interesting because I'm imagining that I pay 3 mana to steal one of my opponent's creatures. I cast the Master, I exile the creature, and then I somehow get the Master to go back to my hand so that when I steal another one of my opponent's creatures, I can cast the Master again to exile it again, and just keep doing that over and over again. Sounds annoying to play against, but I think that would be pretty fun. The Master, it's cool. Dalek Squadron, 3 mana, just Myriad and Menace. So when this attacks, you get a copy of it for each opponent that you have. So technically, if you have 3 opponents, when this attacks, you're attacking with 3 3/3s, 1 going at each opponent. The Cyber Controller, when the Cyber Controller enters the battlefield, each opponent mills X cards. Put all creature cards milled this way onto the battlefield face down under your control. They're 2/2 creatures. Okay, so you can force your opponents to mill cards. I mean, I don't know if our commander really cares about milling, but this is a legendary creature, so if you can somehow generate an infinite amount of mana, you can make your opponents mill an infinite amount of cards, and then this card basically just reads, when this enters the battlefield, you win the game. So this card as a commander, because it is a legendary creature, just ends the game. I like this card actually. I actually think I'm gonna build this commander deck, and I'm just gonna build the deck to make infinite mana, cast the Cyber Controller, just win the game. That's a good card. Vashta Narada, Shadow Indestructible. At the beginning of each end step, if a creature died this turn, put a counter on that creature. I mean, 3 mana, 1/1 Indestructible. That Shadow meaning generally it can't be blocked. That's cool. It's like Yahenni. Weeping Angel, flash, so you can play this on your opponent's turn. First strike vigilance. Whenever an opponent casts a creature spell, Weeping Angel isn't a creature until the end of turn. If Weeping Angel would deal combat damage to a creature, prevent that damage, and the creature's owner shuffles it into their library. Okay, so you just flash this as an instant speed to block something, and then it's basically removal. Cool. We got a Zygon Infiltrator. You can pay 3 mana to tap another target creature and put a stun counter on it. Okay, that's pretty cool. Zygon Infiltrator becomes a copy of that creature for as long as the creature remains tapped. That's cool. Ashad the Lone Cyberman. The first non-legendary artifact spell you cast each turn has Casualty 2. Whenever you sacrifice another creature, put a counter on Ashad. Casualty 2 meaning that whenever you cast that spell, if you sacrifice a creature with 2 power, you get a copy of that spell. Cult of Skaro. Whenever Cult of Skaro attacks, choose 1 at random. Put a counter on each artifact creature you control. You can draw 2 cards. You can create a 3/3 artifact creature token with menace, and then each opponent is either going to lose 4 life. Alright. I mean, this is a legendary artifact creature, so you're not going to be able to put a ton of these creatures on the battlefield to do that when they attack. I would like to play this card in a deck where I can make many copies of this and then attack and get a whole bunch of different triggers. I like, you know, if you're someone who wants to purchase this commander deck, I would also recommend buying the Mishra commander deck, and you could probably combine both of these commander decks together, and you would have a pretty powerful, pretty strong commander deck, I would think, because they both share the same colors and they kind of have the same synergies here. Renegade Silent. At the beginning of your end step, goad up to 1 target creature you don't control and put 1/1 counter on Renegade Silent. Renegade Silent phases out. Okay, so you just get to goad something for 4 mana. I mean, for 4 mana, I don't know if I really like this card. Solemn Simulacrum enters the battlefield. You can search your life for a land, put it onto the battlefield tapped. When he dies, you can draw a card. This card's a staple in Commander. It's just good to have in your collection. Sycorax Commander, first strike haste. When Sycorax Commander enters the battlefield, each opponent faces a villainous choice. That opponent discards all the cards in their hand, then draws that many cards -1. Or Sycorax Commander deals damage to that player equal to the number of cards in their hand. And if you're playing in a commander deck where your opponents are losing life when they draw cards, or they're giving you things when they discard cards, like I mentioned earlier, they may just choose to take damage. But you play this in a commander deck where you're just infinitely bringing in the Sycorax Commander over and over again and forcing your opponent to make that choice over and over again, and it could be devastating. The Beast, Deathless Prince. When you cast a spell, gain control of target creature until the end of turn. That's what I was talking about earlier. Untap it, it gains menace and haste until the end of turn. And then when you take control of that creature, you're going to go ahead and cast the Master and then exile that creature because you now control it. After you take control of that creature, the beast enters the battlefield tapped with 6 stun counters on it. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to its owner, untap the beast and draw a card. So you're just taking a creature and then attacking your opponent with it, and then you get to untap the beast. So this really wants to play in a commander deck where you're taking your opponent's creatures and then attacking them with them, and hopefully dealing damage so that you can untap the beast and then draw a card. Interesting card. I mean, I don't think it's too powerful, but I like the idea of it. The Flood of Mars, Island Walk. Whenever the Flood of Mars attacks, put a flood counter on another target creature or land. If it is a creature, it becomes a copy of the Flood of Mars. If it's a land, it becomes an island in addition to its other types. Okay. The Master Gallifrey's End. Whenever a non-token artifact creature you control dies, you may exile it. If you do, choose an opponent with the most life among your opponents. That player faces a villainous choice. They lose 4 life, or you create a token to copy of that card. Oh, okay. That's cool. The Master Mesmerist. Target creature an opponent controls with power less than or equal to the Master's power gains scope until the end of turn, and it becomes goaded. That's fun. For 4 mana though, whenever a creature with scope deals combat damage to one of your opponents, put a counter on the Master and draw a card. Okay. So I would like to play this card in a deck where I can tap the Master to goad something, and then untap him, goad something else, untap him, goad something else, and then just continuously draw cards when those creatures are dealing damage to your opponents, because they may or may not have unblockable. It's a cool card. The Rani. Whenever the Rani enters the battlefield or attacks, create a red aura enchantment token named Mark of the Rani attached to another target creature. That token has enchant creature, and enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and is goaded. More goad. Whenever a goaded creature deals combat damage to one of your opponents, investigate. So you're going to create a clue token that you can sacrifice for 2 mana to draw a card. Cool. Vislor Turlo. When Visslor Torlo enters the battlefield, you may have an opponent gain control of it. If you do, it is goaded for as long as they control it, more goad. At the beginning of your end step, draw a card, then you lose life equal to the number of cards in your hand. This is a companion card, so hopefully the companion that goes alongside this card is good. Dalek Drone Flying Menace. When Dalek Drone enters the battlefield, destroy target creature opponent controls. That player loses 3 life. Yeah, enters the battlefield, destroying creatures is always good. Brassilon the War President. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 2 life and exile the top card of your library. You may play that card for as long as it remains exiled. So you get to kind of draw 2 cards a turn with this. Each non-creature spell you cast from exile has Conspire. So that means that as you cast that spell, you may tap 2 untapped creatures you control that shares a color with it. When you do, copy it. Okay. Cool card. I mean, there's probably a lot of really cool combos that are going to work with that commander. Sontaran General, Trample Haste. Whenever the general and at least 2 other creatures attack, for each opponent, goad up to 1 target creature that player controls. Those creatures can't block this turn. So I'm thinking, guys, like, you might want to just take one of the goading legendary creatures and make them the commander of this commander deck, because I'm not too sure if things are really focused on what the commander over here is wanting to do. I think the deck might run more consistently if you swap out Davros with any of the 3 color legendary creatures that are forcing people to goad, like the Rani. I think that you might get more out of the deck with that versus playing. I mean, this card is just kind of like generally good, but you know, at the beginning of your end step, you're going to create that 3/3, which would just assume that you're just dealing damage with Davros at minimum. It would have been a lot better if this said at the beginning of each end step, create a 3/3 if an opponent lost 3 or more life this turn, because you're having your opponents goad, which means that they're attacking your opponents, which means that there's more of the opportunity that your opponents are going to be losing life, and then you would make a 3/3. And there are other cards that exist that create 3/3s on your opponent's turn, so I don't think that it would have been too much to kind of ask for. I just think that Davros, the more I look at this, the more I think that you take Davros out of the command zone and make one of the other creatures the commander of this deck, because it may work. It may synergize much more appropriately. So we have the Valyard. If an opponent would face a villainous choice, they face that choice an additional time. While voting, you may vote an additional time. So the one card that finally just kind of synergized with the commander of this commander deck. Yep, right on time. And Time Reaper, that's funny. Flying Haste. Whenever Time Reaper deals combat damage to a player, put target face-up card they own into exile on the bottom of their library. If you do, you gain 3 life. So you just get to deal damage to something and then remove something from the game, basically. Auton Soldier. You may have Auton Soldier enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield except it isn't legendary, is an artifact in addition to its other types, and has Myriad. Wow, that's a great card right there. Missy. Whenever another non-artifact creature dies, return to the battlefield under your control face down and tapped. It's a 2/2 Cyberman artifact. At the beginning of your end step, each opponent faces a villainous choice. Each artifact creature you control deals 1 damage to that opponent, or you draw a card and chaos ensues. The Master Multiplied Myriad. The Master Multiplied Myriad. The legend rule doesn't apply to creature tokens you control. Triggered abilities you control can't cause you to sacrifice or exile creature tokens you control. So you play this in a commander deck where you can make token copies of your creatures that say at the beginning of your end step you have to sacrifice this token copy, but because of this card being in play, you're not going to have to sacrifice it. You get to keep the creature. Cool. There's a lot of cards that do that. This card is a really fun card in Magic the Gathering. There's a lot of cards this is going to synergize with. Pretty fun. Cyberman Squadron. Non-legendary artifact creatures you control have Myriad. Cool. That's always cool. That card can win games. The Dalek Emperor. Affinity for Daleks. Okay. Other Daleks you control have haste. At the beginning of combat on your turn, each opponent faces villainous choice. Okay. That player sacrifices a creature they control, or you create a 3/3 with menace. I'm a big fan of forcing my opponents to sacrifice creatures, and if you can figure out a way to put many copies of the Dalek Emperor onto the battlefield, you could potentially force them to face many villainous choices. And if you can give your creatures haste, which they will, because this gives Daleks haste. When you make those 3/3s, they're going to be able to attack that same combat. This card is fantastic. Doomsday Confluence. Choose X. You may choose the same mode more than once. X meaning you can put any amount of mana into the spell. So if I do 4X and then 1 black, that means I get 2 copies of the spell. The modes being each player sacrifices a non-artifact creature, create a 3/3, or each opponent discards a card. Okay. Cyber Conversion, turn target creature face down. It's a 2/2 Cyberman artifact creature. That's good removal. I like that for 2 mana. Delete. Delete deals X damage to each non-artifact creature and each player. Wow, that's a one-sided board wipe. Don't blink. Until the end of turn, if one or more creatures would enter the battlefield from exile or being cast from exile, their owner shuffles them into their libraries instead. Okay, that's pretty cool. That's very specific. I feel like this card, it has cycle for a reason, because you probably just want to discard this card to draw a card. This card is very situational. Feed the Swarm. Yep, that's a good card. Exterminate, yep, destroy target creature, cool. Ensnared by the Mara. Each opponent faces a villainous choice. They exile cards on the top of their library until they exile a non-land card, then you may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Or, that player exiles the top 4 cards of their library, and Ensnared by Mara deals damage equal to the total mana value of those cards exiled by that player. Okay. Imagine getting 4 copies of the spell cast at one time. That would be devastating. Snuff Out. Oh, so you can just pay 4 life and destroy a non-black creature. That's a good card. That's actually a really good reprint. I'm very happy about that. This is a fantastic card right here. This is how it ends. Target creature's owner shuffles it into their library, then they face a villainous choice. They lose 5 life, or they shuffle another creature they own into their library. Okay. I mean, 4 mana, instant speed removal. Could be better, but it's a fun card. Like I said, it would be cool to do, imagine copying this, 3 times and you get this spell cast 4 times in 1 turn. Seems fun. Great Intelligence's Plan. Draw 3 cards and target opponents face a villainous choice. More villainous choices. They discard 3 cards, or you may cast a spell from your hand without paying its mana cost. Okay. Hunted by the Family. Choose up to 4 target creatures you don't control. For each of them, that player faces a villainous choice. That creature becomes a 1/1 white human, loses all abilities, or I get to create a token copy of it. I mean, for 7 mana, that's cool. Blasphemous Act, deal 13 damage to each creature for 1 mana most of the time. That's always good. We got the Soul Ring, cool. Wayfarer's Bauble, great. Arcane Signet, fantastic. These are all things that give you mana. Lightning Greaves is always good. It's a $5 card. Mind Stone, good. Talisman Dominance, great. Thought Vessel over here, great. This Talisman, great. Commander's Sphere, yeah. You might want to take this card out of the deck. Laser Screwdriver. I think every deck is getting a copy of this card over here. It's very good. The Midnight Crusader Shuttle. Whenever Midnight Crusader Shuttle attacks, defending player faces a villainous choice. That player sacrifices a creature, or you gain control of a creature of your choice that player controls until the end of turn. If you gain control of a creature this way, tap it, and it's attacking that player. Okay, so this kind of synergizes with some of the other cards that were being shown earlier. I would just take this card out of the deck. Then we have Cybership, Flying. Whenever Cybership deals combat damage to a player, put the top 2 cards of that player's library onto the battlefield face down under your control. They are 2/2 Cybermen artifact creatures. This is an 8/8 with Flying and crew 4. Okay, I mean, that's fun. I would just play this in Kotori, and then just, I don't want vehicles inside this deck. That's just the way I'm thinking. Day of the Moon, choose target card name, then go to all creatures with that name chosen for Day of the Moon. Okay, so this is really good against token type commander decks. We have Propaganda. Okay, creatures can't attack you unless they pay 2. I mean, that's a good card to have in your collection. I just don't know if you really need that card inside this deck, especially because we're goading so much. Creatures are not going to be attacking you anyway. The Sound of Drums. Speaking of goading, enchanted creature is goaded. If enchanted creature deals combat damage to a permanent player, it deals double that damage instead. Oh, and then you can return that from your graveyard to your hand. Guys, this card is awesome. That card is so good. I really like that card. I'm gonna buy multiple copies of that card. That card is fun. The Toy Maker's Trap. At the beginning of your upkeep, secretly choose a number between 1 and 5 that hasn't been chosen. If you do, an opponent guesses which number you chose. Then you reveal the number you chose. If they guessed wrong, they lose life equal to the number they guessed and you draw a card. If they guessed right, sacrifice a Toymaker's Trap. I mean, cool. I get to draw a card and then they lose life equal to the number I guessed. I would like this spell to be 2 mana or even 1 mana. I feel like at 3 mana, this seems like a lot, and it happens during my upkeep, so I have to wait an entire turn for this to happen. I don't know. I feel like this card is kind of whack. And it's only 1 opponent. Yeah, I would just take this card out of the deck. Unless I can make 5 copies of this and do this 5 times, that's the only time I could see this card being cool. Blink. So for the first 2 turns, you're going to choose hard creature and its owner is going to shuffle it into the library. Cool. And then the last 2 turns, you're going to create a 2/2 black alien angel artifact creature token with first strike, vigilance, and whenever an opponent casts a creature spell, this permanent isn't a creature until the end of turn. Interesting. Death in Heaven. First 2 turns, target player is going to mill 2 cards and then exile their graveyard. Okay. Put all creature cards exiled with Death in Heaven onto the battlefield face down under your control. And then if you can figure out a way to flip them over so they become what they actually are, you may be able to win the game depending on the situation. Genesis of the Daleks. So for the first 3 turns, you're going to create a 3/3 with Menace for each lore counter. So for the first one, you get 1. The next turn, you're going to get 2. The third turn, you get 3. Then on the 4th turn, target opponent's going to face the villainous choice. You destroy all Dalek creatures, and each of your opponents lose life equal to the total power of Daleks that died this turn. Wow, this card's going to end games, guys. Wow, this is actually pretty cool. Or destroy all non-Dalek creatures, which is a one-sided board wipe. That's a fantastic saga right there. That's a good card. Wound Reflection. Speaking of cards that are going to win the game. Like, if you combo this with this, these 2 cards right here will win a game. I can guarantee if you are playing this commander deck, and if you have this on the battlefield alongside with this, you will win that game. I'm telling you right now. Wound Reflection. At the beginning of each end step, each opponent loses life equal to the life they lost this turn. So if they lose 20 life from this, then they're going to lose 20 life from that. But keep in mind that, you know, your opponents do face the villainous choice, so they can just choose not to lose life equal to the number of Daleks. But then if you flash this in when they do that, you know, in some fantastical universe, then you would win the game. The lands we have here are Canyon Slow, Great Land, another Great Land, good. Creeping Tar Pit's gonna turn into a creature, cool. Enters tapped. Good land. Wow, Dragon Skull Summit, great. Drowned Catacomb. Yeah, they're doing a really good job of putting fantastic lands into these commander decks, and it's probably why these commander decks are costing, the value is so high. When this enters the battlefield, you're gonna surveil 1, add 1 mana of any color, spend this mana only to cast a Time Lord or Alien. Okay, that's specific to this deck. A Haunted Ridge. Man, they really listened to the land thing about Commander Masters, because the lands inside these commander decks are actually amazing lands. Another one of those removal lands over here. Path of Ancestry, okay. Reliquary Tower, great. River of Tears, wow. Yeah, I mean, these mana, the mana bases from this commander set is probably, and not even probably, is the best mana base I've ever seen in any commander deck of my life that you could ever buy. I mean, like, and then they have the Plane Chase cards over here. Yeah, I mean, the mana base is worth a purchase in and of itself. The mana base is fantastic. This deck just seems like a very good way to start. I think there's a lot of really good value for players that are, you know, acclimated with Magic the Gathering and play Magic the Gathering a lot. I think from a new player's perspective though, I still think that I would be hesitant to purchase this as a new player, just because there are so many different things you have to be aware of when playing this commander deck, and so many different, like, just ways to play and things that are going to happen and rules you have to understand and know. I think this deck is incredibly complicated and would be potentially a poor play experience for someone who's brand new to the game. I would recommend, if you bought this commander deck, like, buy it. If you enjoy Doctor Who, it's fun. I mean, if you're really into the Masters of Evil stuff, like, go ahead and you can own it. I would just recommend you buy another commander deck like Wyleth, Soul of Steel. That's just incredibly straightforward. You learn how to play the game through that. You learn how to do different things and just manage a game of Commander, and then have this deck on the side so that when you have more experience playing the game and you learn a little bit more of the rules, you can play this deck and experience a lot more success. The value that you get from this deck is fantastic. I give this deck a 9 out of 10. I just think that from a new player's perspective, right, because this is a beginner's guide, I would hold off on buying this deck until you learn a lot more about the game, because there's so many different things that are going on with this commander deck, and I feel like if I was brand new and I bought this deck and I played it, I would not even be able to think about what I'm doing. I would just play cards to play cards. And if you want to buy this deck anyway, like I purchased it, I'm going to be making videos in the future where I sit down and actually play the commander deck, and then I'm most likely just going to link that in the video so that you can see that. That way you watch me play the commander deck so you know how to think while you're playing it, so that you can experience the same success that an experienced or skilled player would when playing this commander deck. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this video. Keep in mind that we do have the deck list for all the other Doctor Who commander decks on this channel, and if you want to check out other commander decks and any of the other reviews, there are probably more than 40 to 50 reviews on this channel at this point, and it's only growing, right, because they keep releasing these decks where I review them, play them, so that you can make an informed purchase. Okay, always remember, eat healthy, okay, work out every single day, and most importantly, you guys got to remember to believe in yourself. All right, peace out, people.